What if the greatest love of your life is already unfolding, before either of you has even found the words? It happens in a moment so small you almost miss it. The way his gaze lingers just a little longer than it should, the way his voice softens when he says your name, the way his energy shifts around you, quiet, steady, unmistakable. Have you ever felt it? If you have, settle in with me, because today we're going to take this slowly. This is a conversation to feel, not to rush. Let's walk through it together, that invisible thread tying you to someone without a single word spoken. Maybe it's the way he shows up with thoughtful check-ins, or the way you simply feel safer when he's near, even if nothing is said out loud, and you start to wonder, is he just being kind, or is there something deeper happening here? You replay those fleeting moments in your mind, hoping for a sign, something to tell you your heart isn't just wishing. But what if I told you? You might already be seeing it. Because real love, the kind that transforms lives, rarely begins with fireworks. It starts quietly, in the small ways his heart begins responding to yours, long before his mind can catch up. Carl Jung, one of the great architects of modern psychology, believed that the emotions we don't fully understand still move our lives forward. They express themselves in our instincts, our everyday behaviors, and the unconscious patterns we can't always explain. That means, even if a man hasn't spoken, the words, his soul might already be reaching for you, and today we're going to step through that invisible door together, into the hidden world where love speaks, without needing permission from the mind. If you've ever been drawn to someone whose actions said more than his words, if you've ever trusted your intuition even when logic told you to doubt, stay close, because by the end of this journey, you'll know exactly how to recognize the 8 powerful soul-level signs that a man is far more in love than even he knows. And before we go any deeper, if you've ever felt that kind of soul-deep unspoken connection, I'd love for you to share it by commenting "Soul Connection" below. Your story matters here, and I read every single one. Now, let's begin with a truth from Jung that could change how you see love forever. What is not made conscious appears in our lives as fate. In other words, even the feelings we never name still shape the way we walk through the world. They color our words, they soften our touch, they shine through our eyes, especially when we look at someone who's quietly becoming a part of our fate, because love doesn't always roar when it arrives. Sometimes it's born in a stillness so deep you can only feel it if you listen with your heart. Today, we'll learn how to recognize that love before it's even spoken. Because once you see the signs, you'll never doubt your heart again. One of the first signs you'll notice is hidden in the smallest details, the quiet ways he begins to truly see you. When a man is unconsciously falling in love, one of the first things that changes is his attention. Not in a flashy, dramatic way, but in how deeply and instinctively he starts to notice the little things. He might not be the most talkative man in the room. He might not say much at all. But you'll begin to feel it in the way he sees you. He notices when your voice sounds a little different, even if you say you're fine. He remembers that one random detail you mentioned 3 weeks ago, like the name of your neighbor's dog, or that book you said you were meaning to read. He comments on something small, your new scarf, the way your hair is parted today, the tone you use when you're tired. But it stops you, because it's real, it's tuned in. This kind of noticing doesn't come from trying to impress. It comes from emotional resonance. Something inside him is already connected to you, even if he hasn't named it yet. You deserve to be truly seen, not just by anyone, but by someone whose heart recognizes you even in the quietest moments. Carl Jung once said that what moves us deeply often begins expressing itself through the unconscious, through behaviors, patterns, and small acts we don't even realize we're doing. So if he's starting to pick up on things no one else sees, it's because something inside him is already tracking you, not out of habit, but from an internal pull toward your presence. Let me give you an example. Lisa, 56, had been friends with David for over a year. One night at a small gathering, she felt off, quiet, emotionally drained. She said nothing about it. No one else noticed. The next morning, David called and said, "I don't know why, but last night you seemed different. Is everything all right?" Lisa later shared that it was that moment, not a gift, not a compliment, not a confession, that made her feel completely seen. She realized then that he cared deeply. Even if he hadn't said the words yet, his soul had already chosen her. If a man in your life begins tuning into your subtle shifts, your moods, your energy, your unspoken signals, pay attention. That kind of awareness is never accidental. It's one of the earliest signs that his heart is already involved. Have you ever noticed a man picking up on tiny details about you without you ever saying a word? Tell me in the comments. I would love to hear. And as his awareness deepens, you might notice another quiet change. A shift, not just in how he sees you, but in how he shows up when he's near you. Not all changes in a man are obvious, but when he's unconsciously in love, something shifts. Not in what he says, but in who he becomes when he's around you. Some men keep the same tone with everyone. Their energy doesn't change much, no matter who walks into the room. But when a man is drawn to you in a way he doesn't fully understand yet, his presence starts to soften. His rhythm changes. You feel the difference. Not because he tells you, but because his energy speaks louder than words ever could. You might notice he becomes a little quieter or more thoughtful. Maybe he fumbles his words when he usually doesn't. Maybe he listens more deeply or pauses when you speak, like he's hanging on to each word. He may even seem awkward at times, and that's not a flaw. It's vulnerability. It's him letting his guard down in a way he doesn't with anyone else, because true connection doesn't make us polished. It makes us real. Real connection honors your heart, your story, and your strength. And you are absolutely worthy of that kind of love. Carl Jung taught that love, when it begins at the level of the soul, disarms the ego. It bypasses performance and pulls us into presence. When a man starts to feel safe enough around you to stop performing, to just be himself, that's when something deeper is happening. Let me share a story that speaks to this. Mark, 63, had always been a confident guy. In meetings with friends, even in past relationships, he was composed, in control. But when he met Elaine, something shifted. He told me, "I'd find myself stumbling on words. I'd show up early and then pace the block before knocking on her door. It was like being 16 again, and I didn't know what to do with it." That wasn't nervousness. It was transformation. His soul was speaking through his behavior, not with rehearsed lines, but with the kind of openness that only comes when love begins to grow beneath the surface. So if you notice that he's different with you, not because he's trying to impress you, but because he seems more real, more exposed, more present, that's not random, that's resonance. That's the unconscious beginning to align his inner world with yours. Because when a man is truly drawn to you, he doesn't just act differently, he becomes different around you. And that change, even if small, is one of the most powerful signs his heart is waking up. Have you felt that shift when someone's entire energy changes around you? It's a quiet but powerful sign. As his feelings grow stronger, another beautiful instinct often begins to emerge, one that shows up not in words, but in the quiet ways he starts to care for you without even realizing it. When a man is falling in love, especially at a deeper, unconscious level, he often won't say it out loud at first. But his protective instincts begin to surface, not in a controlling way, not in a flashy, over-the-top way, but through subtle, consistent moments of care. You'll notice he starts paying attention to your comfort. Maybe he makes sure you're walking on the safer side of the sidewalk. He reminds you to bring a jacket before you even check the weather. He texts you just to make sure you got home safely, even if the evening was casual. He brings you water when you're talking too much and forget to hydrate. Or he remembers how you take your coffee without asking. None of it is performative. He's not doing it to impress you. He does it because something inside him feels responsible for your well-being. Not in a heavy way, but in a heart connected, where Carl Jung believed that the unconscious expresses itself not through words, but through symbolic action. And when a man begins to see you as emotionally significant, even if he hasn't fully realized it, his behavior naturally shifts toward nurturing, because what the soul values, it protects. This doesn't mean he wants to fix you. Mature. Men know that care isn't about solving problems. It's about showing presence, support, stability. It's the energy of, I'm here. You matter. I've got you. Let me share a real moment from someone in our community. Clara, 58, told us about a man she'd been dating casually. She never said she hated driving at night, but one evening he offered to follow her car all the way home, just to make sure she was okay. No speech, no pressure, just quiet presence. She said that was the night her heart shifted, because it wasn't romance in the typical sense, it was care. Deep, grounded care. So if a man in your life starts anticipating your needs, if he looks out for your comfort when you're not even asking, pause. That's love beginning to show itself before he's ready to call it love. It means you've entered the part of his heart where protection isn't obligation, it's instinct. And as that invisible bond grows stronger, you'll notice that even when you're not with him, a part of you remains quietly present in his world. One of the clearest signs that a man is more in love than he realizes is what happens when you're not around, when you're out of sight, but not out of mind, when your name comes up in his conversations, not because he's trying to impress someone, but because you're just there in his thoughts, naturally, repeatedly. He brings up a show you once recommended, randomly, during a conversation with his co-workers. He sees something in a store window and says, "This reminded me of you." He texts you, just to tell you a joke you would have found funny, or sends you a photo of something that made him think of that story you told him weeks ago. This isn't strategy. This isn't game. This is his unconscious mind making space for you in his daily life. Carl Jung believed that once something enters our emotional core, it becomes an internal image, a figure that influences our decisions, our emotions, even our routines. That's what you become when a man is quietly falling for you, not a fleeting thought, but a constant echo inside his emotional world. And it's not about how often he contacts you, it's about the quality of that contact. Does he remember things you barely mentioned? Does he circle back to topics you forgot you talked about? Does he show up in moments that have nothing to do with convenience, but everything to do with connection? That's the sign. Let me give you a real story. Teresa, 60, said she once told her friend Sam about an old song that reminded her of her father. She mentioned it once, in passing. A month later, on her birthday, Sam sent her a link to that song with a note. This felt like today. No big gesture, no romantic poetry, but in that moment, she knew. He listened. And more than that, he remembered. Not out of obligation, but because she had taken up quiet space inside his world. When a man is unconsciously in love, he doesn't just think about you in the moment. He carries you in his thoughts, in his routines, in the in-between spaces of his day. If you're hearing your name in places you never expected, or he brings you up when you didn't ask, he's not just being polite. He's already emotionally invested, and his soul is starting to speak. Have you ever crossed someone's mind like that, without even trying? Let me know if you've experienced it. And as his emotional connection deepens, It quietly reshapes the way he moves through his life, without him even realizing just how much space he's already given you. One of the most revealing signs that a man is falling in love, without even knowing it, is when he starts to make space for you in his life without consciously trying to. This isn't about dramatic shifts or scheduled calendar blocks. It's about how, over time, you start noticing that you're no longer an afterthought. You've become part of his rhythm. He starts calling you on his lunch break, not out of obligation, but because hearing your voice centers him. He begins asking about your week before he tells you about his. When he's making weekend plans, your name is naturally included, not because you asked, but because it feels incomplete without you. And the key here is, he's not even fully aware of how much he's doing it. His unconscious is already weaving you into his emotional map. You're not just someone he likes. You've become someone. He needs to feel balanced. Carl Jung once said that what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. When a man resists naming his feelings, they don't go away. They begin to shape his choices, his availability, his habits. So if he's rearranging things, even small ones, to make room for you, it's not random. It's because emotionally, he's already made a place for you. Let me share a story from our community. Gloria, 62, told us about her partner Alan. They weren't exclusive yet, but she started to notice something. Every time she had a stressful work day, he'd suddenly happen to call that evening. If she mentioned a family visit was coming up, he'd remember and follow up. And when she told him she was overwhelmed one weekend, he showed up with takeout and a quiet presence, not because she asked, but because he had already started prioritizing her peace. These are the moments that matter, not the flowers, not the perfect words. The real sign is consistency, noticing, showing up, making emotional space even when he hasn't said the words out loud. So if you're finding that he's making time, remembering details and adjusting his world without you needing to ask, it means something inside him already sees you as part of his future. Even if his lips haven't said it, his life is starting to. Because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it lives quietly, in a glance, a gesture, or the steady warmth of presence. Real love doesn't clamor for attention. It grows softly, weaving two lives together, even when no words are spoken. And maybe the most beautiful part of all is that none of these changes are forced. They unfold naturally, the way real love always does, gently, steadily, from the inside out, which brings us to an even deeper truth. So, why does this really matter? Because too many women, especially those in midlife and beyond, have spent years questioning what they feel, dismissing their intuition, and waiting for that perfect moment when he'll finally say what they've been sensing all along. Maybe you've been told that love has to be clear and spoken, that if a man hasn't made a bold move or said the words, it must not be real. But that's simply not true. Carl Jung taught that love doesn't always begin with conscious thought. It begins in the subtle shifts, the emotional gravity, the quiet ways someone starts to reorient their world around you. And when you learn to trust that, to listen not just with your ears, but with your heart, you stop needing the performance. You start recognizing presence. If he shows up differently for you, if he notices what others miss, if he softens around you, protects you in subtle ways, thinks about you when you're gone, opens his world to include you. You're not imagining it. You're witnessing the soul's version of I love you, long before the mind puts it into words. If this message brought you clarity, hope, or even a little peace, give it a thumbs up so it can reach someone else who may need to hear this too. Leave a comment below with soul connection if this resonated, or share which of the 8 signs spoke to your heart the most. I read every message, and your story matters here. And if you're on this journey, navigating real connection, emotional healing, and love that goes beyond surface, hit subscribe and tap the bell. You belong here because love isn't always loud. Sometimes it speaks in a glance, a gesture, a quiet shift inside someone's heart. If you're seeing these signs, even if they seem small, trust the connection you feel. Real love doesn't shout. It simply grows, softly, steadily, like two lives weaving together without needing permission. You are worthy of a love that shows up, not just in words, but in the actions that whisper, "You're already part of me." Thank you for sharing this space with me today. Your heart deserves to be seen, honored, and loved, exactly as it is. I'll see you in the next video. Until then, keep trusting the quiet magic that's already unfolding inside your life. You are more loved, more seen, and more worthy than you even know.